Hello. Hope you're all doing well. This is Michael Mirdad doing one of our Friday night live spiritual insights programs. Thanks for being with us. One of the things I do, and I think we all are capable of doing, but people underestimate it, is just listening to Spirit, just getting guidance on any topic. Edgar Cayce said, a person can gain information on any topic, no limit, in meditation or through some other, exercises along those lines. But through meditation, for example, you could gain information on anything. You could close your eyes and meditate if you believe you can, and develop the skill to say, I'm missing my car keys, where are those? Open up, boom, and you could get insights as to that, where that is, where your car keys are. You could meditate and get an inspiration on a new painting if you're a painter. And even if you're not a painter, you could get that. It could be on anything. But people live just kind of so intellectual that it just doesn't, work for them. They don't get that. So they figure if I don't study it, then I don't know it. And that's very linear thinking. And the world is changing. If you haven't noticed, I said this a week ago, or maybe at the last Sunday service at Unity. August is going to be a really trippy month because of a couple of eclipses and the fact that these eclipses are in Leo and Sagittarius. Leo and Aquarius. And, the significance in that, I went into a bit of, information about how that all connects. And I think I didn't even remember to mention, right smack dab in the middle of all that is a Mercury retrograde, if you know what that is. Mercury retrograde is kind of a buzz phrase some people throw around, but what it means in the simplest sense is Mercury, which rules communication, retrograde means backwards. So it's like communication will be all wonky. So what an odd month we're going to have. But some people are already feeling it like frequencies. They're feeling kind of like just disoriented. A little shaken inside, like somebody's, like pin the tail on the donkey, they spin you round and round and round, blindfold you, spin you round and round and expect you to go pin the tail on the donkey, and yet you're disoriented. So, you might have an up day on a Monday, a friend might have an up day on a Tuesday, but then you might have also down days at opposite times. So be there for each other. You guys, you might be doing pretty well on this day and that day, but the days you're off, let friends know. They might be able to support you by helping you not have to do a whole lot. I'm not saying you should put your head in the sand like an ostrich, but I would say it's kind of wise to just take moments to chill and reconnect. Like Cayce was saying, in meditation you can get anything. So it's like that. Take a moment to recenter and what I call recalibrate, readjust things, your energy, your consciousness, a little faith, a little sanity, whatever you'd like to call it. So those are things to consider. And shifting gears just slightly, try to imagine that there's a sort of involution that I describe of how creation occurs, and it's something along these lines. In reality, capital R, in God's reality, we all have a lifeline in heaven. And you could say metaphorically what that means is even though we look like we're here, the way a baby, an embryo and such, is connected to its mother through an umbilical cord inside the womb, we're connected inside the consciousness of God. So there's this lifeline we have to God. And no matter where we think we go, we can project ourselves, as we seem to have done, out of heaven and into creation. Whether you think that's a fall from grace or whether you think that's an evolutionary process, an exploration of souls, whatever you think that to be. The point is, when we left, we kept a lifeline to sanity, God, ultimate high consciousness. So that's kind of cool. But metaphorically, what that means is that there's a part of us that still has a connection to God, which is in our upper three chakras. So the Trinity of God isn't just out there in heaven somewhere and we have a lifeline to it. It's actually also right here within our upper three chakras. Now, if we just learned to come from this place, not live only in this place, because we have other chakras now, so you might as well use them properly. But here you are in the upper centers, so we are connected to that. But we don't live from it consistently. Some people not at all. But, even spiritual people, we tap into it. You could say that some geniuses, they say, maybe access a fraction more brain cells than other people. It's not really about brain cells. Brain cells are a stinking illusion. You don't just activate a little brain cell and go, look at me, I'm a master, I'm a divine being. That's just ridiculous. You awaken consciousness and then the brain cells cooperate. But if all you know is science, you're going to go, we've done some studies, this guy was a genius and it looks like he used more brain cells. Because they don't know anything but brain cells, because they have a lot of dead brain cells apparently, so they have to overcompensate and analyze other people's brain cells. But what I mean by that is just, it's ridiculous. The analyzing and excusing, making analysis and reasons for things you don't even get, you don't even understand. So learn to understand that it's about spirit. If you're a brilliant, beautiful being, it starts. And credit, learn to credit again the connection to God. Some people, they say to me, oh, Michael, I really like this about you, or your teaching style, or, you as a counselor or a healer. And then they'll say, it must be your sign. What sign are you? It's like saying, what did you have for breakfast? Is that what makes you intuitive? Yes. I had, organic, intuitive Wheaties, and that made me extra intuitive. Like, humans are just so ridiculous because they have to try to think of everything just so linearly. And it's ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. That's why I make fun of it. Because it's just silly. But it's choice. It's the choice to stay connected to God, if you want to put it in a word. So some of us have just chosen to remain connected more than others. It's not those of us who have learned to achieve more. Yes, you could cut off from God, nurture your own wits, your own accounting skills, and become a great investor. But would you want to really brag about that? Being disconnected from spirit, but managing some sort of extra human skills? It's like A Course in Miracles tries to explain. You can actually nurture psychic abilities, he says in the teacher's manual. You can nurture psychic abilities. Wow, cool, you're a clairvoyant. But if you're not connected to God, what the hell's the point of it? It just means now you're just an egotistic psychic. Which makes you more of a psycho, right? So anyway, egotistic psychic is a psycho psychic. That's not what I would want to be. What if you could be as great a psychic as possible, paid the most, but no heart, no connection? Really? Or what about a healer? You can be a surgeon or an intuitive healer. Man, but stay connected to God and do either one from a better place. Less effort, more guidance, more connection to your clients. It's so beautiful, but it's just not linear enough for people to make sense out of it. They say, well, that's not what pays the bills. And that's part of the fall of humanity, just to start thinking improperly. So part of what I'm saying is we can all stay connected to God. And let's learn to credit that. So when people say, Michael, how do you do this? I don't want to overly say, well, it's God, it's God, it's God. Because, they might think it's too flippant, or they might think I'm not hearing them. So sometimes I say thank you, and yeah, I developed that. I took time to practice being intuitive or whatever, just to be somewhat nice. But the truth is, it's a choice. It's a choice to say, thank you, God, and stay connected. Now, in this lifetime, I've chosen to stay connected, which means, by default, next lifetime, if I were to come back to this planet, I would already have some gifts. I would already have some treasure in heaven, as it were. I would already be able to come back with that. Edgar Cayce. Why was Edgar Cayce the most effective, clear, accurate psychic clairvoyant in history? In some TV shows, they'll say, one of the best in America. They just say that because they're ridiculous and they don't understand the shows that they themselves are producing. There's not a close second. It's like in music. a lot of musicians and critics and scholars of the subject matter, there's a saying, there's the Beatles and then there's everyone else. There's not the Beatles and then someone else that's close second. There's not even a close second. You'd have to say, let's say the Beatles take the first 100 positions of the greatest ever, and then there's some other people. So that's pretty cool, right? It's just like in the 60s, there was a point, I think they said they had 6 or 7 of the top 10 songs on the chart. And nobody could ever do that. I mean, somebody else might have pulled off 2, but they're several times greater, several times better. My point is using that as an analogy. Edgar Cayce isn't one of. There's not even a close second. You could maybe have pulled off something like, and we're talking about the quantity of work he did. There's a couple of psychics that have been recorded. Mother Shipton is kind of a cool lady from back in history. Paracelsus was a psychic too, a clairvoyant prophet of sorts. But their work in that area is minimal compared to somebody like Cayce with 14,000 readings, right? And in each reading, he's covering different topics. So it multiplies per reading. So Nostradamus, you could say, except he didn't bother to speak English, literally and metaphorically. He put everything very veiled, But I think he too would be really, really accurate. But it's just too hard to understand what he's saying. Even Cayce is sometimes, a little out there, in his style of languaging. My point again is that crediting, these are people that are high level, right? Cayce, they ask, how did he get to do what he did? Well, a great amount of his skill didn't just happen. He wasn't just born gifted. 2 things happened that you and I have to respect. One is the most important, though. The second most important thing is that over lifetimes, Edgar Cayce nurtured this skill. He was a great master in ancient Atlantis and Egypt, and he nurtured the skill to choose to be intuitive and so on and so on. The number one most important thing, which could override the second of your nurturing certain skills, is that he prayed regularly as a young person. I want to help people. Now, if he would have only had skills, but no humility and longing to help humanity, he would have potentially just been one of those really accurate psychics that would have had some hit, miss, and also some spirit, but also some ego behind what he was doing. And instead it remained highly humble, which increases not only your clarity, but the love quotient that's in your work. So it does happen, guys. It does happen. You can choose that. Now, could you not have any skill background, which is the case for some of us watching, but just choose, here I am, God, here I am, God? Yes. If I could choose one of the 2 things only, the background of skills and the humility, I'd go the humility, because spirit can do anything. The skills alone might not be able to just do anything. So keep that in mind, right? Now, think of how this works, because staying connected to spirit is like staying connected to not my own brain. It's my own choice to say, here I am, God, and nurture, not just the heart chakra. Divine chakra is higher, literally and metaphorically, God. That's the highest consciousness there is. So it serves, and it served Cayce. And we would not have A Course in Miracles if a woman who wrote it didn't say, I'm going to look into some of this spiritual stuff. She says, these seem like they're all charlatans. She goes and looks into Cayce and finds, wow, this guy didn't do anything for himself. Selfless service, as the mystics used to say, selfless service is one of the primary keys to spiritual awakening. And so that thing that Cayce did, and died with very few people knowing it, years later became the pivotal point to allow this woman to trust him, therefore to trust spirituality, therefore to trust God, and write, channel, publish A Course in Miracles. And I think it's changed a few lives on this planet, right? So think about that. One guy's humility way over here affecting someone and then everybody in the world. So don't underestimate that. That's consciousness we're talking about. Choice to trust God consciousness. Now, the way creation works is consciousness could, theoretically, ideally, be chosen as my guide, God. Then that consciousness, which I'm part of, my Christ self, is part of the Trinity. So it's not just honoring something up and out in the sky somewhere, it's the divine, period, and I'm part of that. I am part of God, and I am very holy. A quote from A Course in Miracles. So here's consciousness. Ideally, that consciousness should pour down and inspire our heart, my heart, to new endeavors, new inspirations, faith, trust, just whatever, all the things the heart represents. Love, unconditional love, not romantic human love, but unconditional love. And then I can go, wow, my heart feels so full that consciousness pours down into my solar plexus, or let's call it the lower mind chakra. But that mind can get in line and say, I'm here to serve. So spirit can pour into my heart, then it can pour into my mind, the intellectual mind chakra, and make me go, I'm gonna practice some discipline, some focus and willpower so that I can join with God and get some cool things done. Writing a book, writing a poem, just even the discipline of taking better care of yourself. Weak-willed people are not spiritual people. They'll look like it sometimes, but you can't be spiritual and weak-willed because you can't do anything with the Spirit pouring through you. So it's just going to beat you up because you're going to have this high energy but not have any will to do anything with it. So it's just going to create like overstimulus or fatigue, like a Kundalini kind of casualty consciousness. So if you can practice the mental discipline, the mind, even the intellect, the focus, the willpower, all the better. Then it can pour down into the emotional center. And in the emotional center, we can start to go, God, I feel so excited. That's an emotion, right? Spirit pours, and now it's hitting the emotional center, and I'm like, oh my God, I just feel so ramped up, excited to do some really great things today. And then boom, voila, down to the root chakra, and now it's time for manifestation. It can pour into me as love, coming all the way down to the physical form, in the form of, a smile, hey guys, or a hug. It's warmth. Or it could be paying somebody's bill at the grocery store, or it could be making love, or it could be making dinner. It's all the way through. God, I just feel so great about doing this because I just feel so alive. You see? So, tests were done on consciousness. Is it only humans? Because humans are arrogant enough to think they're the only ones in the universe, but also they're the only ones with consciousness. And so, studies were done as far back as in the 70s, possibly even the 60s, but they started doing studies with plants, as some of you know, and discovering that plants respond. They would put sensitive equipment to these plants and then do tests. I won't go into all the details right now, but they could find that the plants, when put in a violent environment or a loving environment, really intense music or more loving spiritual music, the plants would respond accordingly. Fear and shudder or relax. It's almost like we're describing quantum waves and quantum particles. Particles, I'm not saying, are equivalent to the shuddering and the fear, but to a degree, they freeze. All quantum particles are, which is what makes up what you see in this world, all matter. Quantum particles are nothing but waves that panicked and became frozen so that they became solid for us to see. Now you could say, well, that's too weird, Michael, because that means you're saying solid things are fear-oriented. Yeah, pretty much, which is why A Course in Miracles is saying the universe was created out of fear. We forgot how to just be in the waves and feel the presence of love and one another. And we panicked, which means we started thinking. Then we started thinking independently. Then we started pulling away and thinking our own thoughts. You're separate from mine, which is why I can have a different reality than you. We can both see the same event and have different experiences of it because it's all fear-based. Now, we don't have to get too much into that, so please don't panic if you didn't like what I just said. Just relax with it and be a quantum wave rather than a particle. In any case, this consciousness of God can come all the way through. And so I think there's a DVD on my online books, on my online store, on my website. And I think it's the creation process, but there's some others. Watch for the titles and then look at the descriptions of them, because they're detailed bullet points that explain vibrations and consciousness. But the one on the creation process explains some of this. And what I'm leading to is there is the knowing of God becomes a belief in our heart, thoughts, emotions, and manifestations. That's the creation process. By the same token, there's this point where God is, and we could just let God be all the way through us, and we would be complete co-creators, alive in God, even while on earth. But most humans, what happens is this: even if we're awakened, to some degree, what becomes an amazing oneness being, abstract experience in God, starts shifting. Once we drop into the heart chakra, that beingness starts to take on a vibration. Meaning, beyond perception, it's a deep, it's almost like saying it becomes a consciousness. It starts coming to life. Here's the inspiration of it. It's the God consciousness that's just being, and all of a sudden it says, let there be light. And now you have a vibration starting to happen. A vibration starting, almost like when you meet a person and people call it falling in love. It's like that, but spiritually, it's far, far, far higher than that. So something starts happening. This starts to descend, and it starts to take on a vibration. There is nothing in this universe that doesn't have a vibration behind it. It has to have a vibration. Nothing can manifest, because we're talking about the creation process. Nothing can manifest down here in the root chakra meaning the physical form. Nothing can manifest in the physical form without first having a vibration behind it. So consciousness of God says, let there be light, and it becomes a vibration. Then the vibration starts to densify into something called sound. Then the sound densifies into something called color, and then color into form. Everything that is form has behind it color, has behind it, a sound, has behind it vibration, has behind it an original statement of God or love. And in that sense, we can say God is behind everything. That's kind of cool. You could say God's behind everything because it's the original inception to even be able to create. Kind of cool. The problem is most human beings aren't aware of any of this, which means ignorance is not bliss. Ignorance is a disconnection from bliss. So we choose to be ignorant of our true identity. That's what Buddha explained to be the number one issue of mankind. Ignorance of our identity. So we disconnect. Instead of this beautiful process, we disconnect. Now we're not coming anything from here anymore, even though God is ultimately behind our ability to create. We don't care, we don't see it, most humans. We're just now cut off from spirit. Now at best, we're coming from our heart center. That's not so bad because that's still the place of the soul. It's like not divine, but semi-divine, so that's pretty cool. I'm coming from my heart, and in my heart I decided to write a song and so on. So we can do beautiful things just from our heart. But you know what? Even a heart-centered person can have limits on their love because they're not connected to the source of love, so they can still run dry. Edgar Cayce, man, all the work he did, he exhausted himself and died of exhaustion. He actually died. Yes, you can actually die of exhaustion. He was told in the readings, which would be his connection to spirit, be careful. Here's how many readings you should do. Here's what you need to do to reconnect, or not reconnect, but to regenerate and stay high on your vibes. And he just burned and burned and burned himself out. So an artist, a psychic, anyone and everyone can, even though you're coming from a good heart space, you can still burn it up because it's still your humanness. It's still part of your human 4 chakras, not the divine 3. So most human beings don't even come from their heart. There's only a few of us that even do that. Most at best, come from the next chakra, which is the next chakra. The lower mind, the intellect. Most people think intellectually. That's how they get by. I think I need a new job. Here's how much I have to make rent. Here's what I need to do. Left, right, linear as hell, and that's what they do. They live in hell. And then, you know, if you're really intellectual, you'll override the next chakra down, the emotional center. Who cares about that? I'm intellectual. I let my head lead me. So most people are either going to be coming from their intellect, overriding their emotions downward, and then manifesting physically whatever their thoughts are telling them to do. I'm going to get a new car. I can budget for it. Now I get a new car. And they live like that. To them, that's the creation process. I, the little ego I, they don't realize it's ego, but the little ego I, I'm going to get a car, and I budgeted. Look at me. I got a new car. I budgeted because I know how to budget. Aren't I amazing? There's another group of people that don't come from the intellect. They come from the emotion. You could say stereotypically this is the difference between males and females, or not genders, but right brain and left brain people, or I should say left brain and right brain people, respectively. So some people are more mental, intellectual, and then physical. They manifest their lives physically. Others are emotional, and then they manifest their life from emotion. You know, I love beautiful things and I want to get a dog, and they get a dog because that's the emotional manifestation for them, and that's it. So I hope this is making sense, because there's 4 lower chakras, 4 torso chakras. Most people aren't even coming from the heart. They're coming from the mind to the body or the emotions to the body. Men, women, that's it. That's how most people live. We have 7 chakras, and most people come from 2. My God, right? And we wonder, you know, why we've got problems. Even if we could come from all 4, we would be far, far better off, but still disconnected. We need to come from, and let's take the 7 and connect the upper 3 and just call those the Trinity of God. So we'll call them one, because the Lord thy God is one. So let's say we have 5 states of consciousness: physical, emotional, intellectual, intuitive, and spiritual. Most people come from 2 out of 5. And they barely even do that, but 2 out of 5. And like I said, you could come from 4 and it still wouldn't be enough. Humans love to live by just enough, but it still wouldn't be enough. You know, there are times in my life when I can see I have a lot of reserves, man, and that's deserved reserves. Lifetimes of doing, you know, lifetimes of being a strong person, a good person, and whatever. So I've sort of earned that. But I would not be too proud of that, because I know that there's an end to that. I know that I've got good reserves, you know, running on spirit. A lot of people have said, man, you run on spirit. I do, and I credit it. And that's not a boast for me. A boast for me would be to say there is no such thing as spirit. I run on Michael energy, Michael, and I'm nowhere stupid enough to do that. I know that I could not have sustained my mind, my body on the diet I've had all my life. Nobody could have sustained on that. It has to be God. Nobody could have done the number of sessions I've done. We did an estimate on that sometime recently, only estimating based on 20 years. My private sessions, just on 20 years, not even the 35 I've been teaching. Conservative 20 years, and it ended up in the, I forget, like 100,000 private sessions or something like that. How many hundreds of thousands of students have I taught? You know, all this work, all this work can take energy, just like Cayce's readings took energy and it killed him. Just because we're doing great, wonderful work for people and we love what we're doing, that's not going to sustain us entirely. You have to also stay connected. So there's a frequency that we all have. You could call it a keynote, but there's a frequency. Some people even say they can measure that frequency. You know, oh, my frequency is 800. Yours is only a 400. I'm better than you. That's one of the most ridiculous things that's come up in the spiritual community in the last, in our generation. The idea that you can measure such things. God, all that does is, first of all, it's a very masculine silliness, but all that does is tempt people to compare and say, my frequency is higher than yours. I mean, I wouldn't even want If God itself came to me and said, Michael, I want you to develop this way to rate people. And so I'd be like, God, please find somebody else, because that's so hokey. I wouldn't be able to keep a straight face and tell people, Buddhism rates higher than something else. This rates higher than that. And this music is higher than that. Generally, it's true that things have different vibrations. I just wouldn't want to start pigeonholing people into that. So what I'm leading to in this sense is that everything has a vibration. And our consciousness, when we're caught up in our little self, it's clear we're at a lower vibration. So the universe is helping. Like, think of the universe as a funnel. Here's heaven, linearly speaking, using this metaphor or model. Heaven, the universe, and earth. So picture that. Then imagine whether you want to believe that the prayers of humanity up through the universe to God saying, we're ready, help us. We're really humble now, ready, we're ready, help us. Or you want to just understand that it also works the other way. God's will penetrates through the universe and sends us frequencies. But we're just usually not listening and willing to adapt it. So the earth, though, based on prophecy, based on channeled information, even based on higher science, is going through a quantum shift. The earth is going through a shift in consciousness. In other words, the work you and I are doing on these little shows, these little, hi there, hey, this is Michael, here's a little thought for the day. These things shift people to some degree or another. And I'm doing my part, somebody else is doing their part, and you're doing your part. All of us are kind of part of this collective shifting things. Don't get too caught up in the linear idea that we're going to start like a Michael Facebook group commune where we're all going to go and live somewhere and change the world because everybody will start thinking like you or me or we or whomever. It's not linear like that. Although the ego will try to make us look for that because that'll keep us distracted again. What it is we just do the work and understand that every bit of work we do anywhere on this planet, that little planting of seeds is actually a planting of higher vibrations. When you do that, the overall shifts. You don't shift it like from here to there, where you make everybody different. It's a vibration, it's invisible. Just like the vibration in the heart chakra is not visible way down at the root level. You can only see what? Signs and symptoms of those shifts down on the physical level. I can make major changes in my heart of what I believe. Minor changes will create minor shifts down on the physical level, and major changes will likely create major shifts. Jesus is saying in the Course in Miracles that even though the world and bodies and all that, it's kind of just the crystallization, it's just the manifestation, it's not the real source of change. The change happens inside and then it manifests outside. He says even though it's an illusion, the outer, the most illusionary, you can use it, if for nothing else, for one thing. You can use it for one thing, and that is as a sign, a signpost, as a proof, evidence as to how you're doing inside. So don't go and try to fight hard to change the outside. Keep doing your work on the inside and understand every time you change your beliefs, you're changing your vibration. Every time you change your vibration, you're adding maybe a small gear turning in the big gear of Earth and the universe, but it's shifting something. It seems so minuscule. Sometimes even I go, wow, God, you got to be kidding me. It's going to take so much. The way Jesus describes these changes is, you people have been doing this for millions of years, this moving from God into manifestation. Now you're starting to awaken. Good for you. And he says, but how long will it take for you to get back to complete oneness with God? And he says, well, in all fairness, if it took you 1,000,000 years, just using a round number, 1,000,000 years, it's been millions. But let's pretend it's been millions of years getting from where we were to where we are. And let's pretend today we make a global shift to start awakening. He says, in all fairness, if you moved 1,000,000 years, it took 1,000,000 years to move out, it should take you 1,000,000 years to move back. I mean, it kind of makes sense. If I'm on a freeway and I take 1 mile of distraction, got off the wrong road and went 1 mile the wrong direction, what distance do I need to get back to the freeway? I'm pretty sure it still adds up to a mile. A mile off, a mile back. So he then says, but really, all of it's an illusion and it's under our control. Meaning, he's saying, so technically we can speed that up. Because it's kind of disheartening to imagine, okay, hey, this is Michael Mirdad. Hi, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Guess what? I'm here to announce that in 1,000,000 years, we should be home. I mean, I would have to give up. I'd be like, no way, man. Just the concept is tiring and exhausting, but it's not true. The concept is fair, true-like, or fair, but it's not the way it really is in spirit. In spirit, that 1,000,000 years could be made in 100. It could be reduced to 100 because that's what happens when you work on consciousness. If consciousness shifts, if we choose more God consciousness, not just a little more human consciousness, if we choose more God consciousness, you know what's going to happen? We then choose to bring that down into our hearts and it changes our vibration. And you know what's going to happen after that? We just choose to bring it all the way into manifestation. And it could be like an overnight change. It worked for Helen, who wrote the Course. It worked for Edgar Cayce. It's worked for me. And some of you, of course, can relate that it's working for you. It's the only way to fly. It's the only thing that works. It's not like I'm saying, this might, hey, everybody, this might be a kind of an interesting experiment. It's all that matters. Consciousness. Consciousness then will not change our vibrations unless we choose to let it in to our hearts. Let God into our hearts, and then consciousness shifts our vibration. Why? Because our vibration is rooted in our heart. Your vibration is not in your cellular body. It's in your heart. It manifests in your cellular body. So when we say that there are going to be quantum changes in the universe, when there's going to be molecular shifts and genetic shifts and all that, great. Cannot happen without connecting with the highest and choosing it in our hearts. Then it has a greater chance of anchoring down in the physical form. Some people will say, oh, we have a new vibrational body that's coming to earthlings, and it happens if you just, gnaw on sprouts, organic sprouts, and it'll raise your vibrations or what. Really? If I have to rely on grass, gnawing on grass to change my vibration, first of all, cows would be enlightened then. But if I have to gnaw on lawn shavings to change my vibrations, that means I didn't have much of a consciousness in the first place. If you're going to tell me, a blade of grass has what it takes to make me a better person, I'm in trouble. Maybe there are some people that are so dense that that thing has a higher vibration than them. Oh, a minute ago I was kind of depressed, but wait, on a leaf, wow, I feel awakened now. I guess that could work for somebody. And I don't mean the smoking grass that makes people think that they're becoming enlightened. I'm saying, the stuff of this world can't really do it. You created this world. We created this world. How can something in it fix us? It's our choice to shift from the ego creator that made up all this stuff to the real creator, God and God within us. And I'm so grateful. And I call that presence in. I call that presence into my heart. Who the hell am I? What do I know? I read a book. Wrote a book. I went to school. I didn't go to school. I have children. I don't have children. I'm male. I'm female. I'm black. I'm white. None of that matters. What matters is I remain as God created me. But damned if I don't forget that. All too often. I just so often forget. I am part of God and I am very holy. Oops, my bad. I notice somebody and I think they look whatever, ugly, fat, short, skinny, blonde, brunette, whatever. My perceptions of that person. They're intelligent, they're not intelligent. Those are perceptions. As soon as you catch yourself doing it, just kind of pause and laugh at yourself and go, wow, that's my lower mind running rampant. It only does that out of fear. The only reason I look over and see someone and think they're attractive, as opposed to one with God, I don't see them as one with God. I think they're attractive or not attractive. I don't see them as attractive because it's a nice way for me to feel better about my own unattractiveness or what I believe is not, inadequacy. So good for me. Now I feel better because they're lesser. Look over at someone else and say, they're attractive. Why? Because, wow, now it starts to make me feel a little pizzazz, a little hope, because there might be something going on there. It's all just really weird mind games. So we're greater than that. I don't need anything. I don't need any of you to be sick or healthy, black or white, or this or that. What a relief. So when we see it happening, I'm not saying it's not going to happen, because it happens every day, but learn to see it and say, wow, I just had a thought of making someone into something. I see that person and they're good looking, bad looking, they're tall, they're short. Wow, I'm making them into something. And the best thing to do is see it and go, oops. That's a good mantra. Forget Om Mani Padme Hum. Just try oops. I swear to you, it's more potent and effective in your spiritual growth to just go, oops. Because it means that one mantra, and I don't mean that literally, so please don't start a cult of walking around saying oops. But anyway, that one thing, Om Mani Padme, it's like some of us do it like, I'm hoping this will help, I'm hoping this will help, Om Mani Padme, aren't I spiritual, look at me. Oops means, for a moment there, I was thinking from my ego human self, my fear-based self. That was a mistake. And I'm choosing instead to see as God sees. What could possibly be higher than that? What could be higher than that? Like, it's just perfect. It shifts my consciousness and it brings about a miracle. So as I'm coming to a close, the idea of consciousness and vibrations, think about this. How do you think a miracle happens? What is a miracle? A miracle is that there's a dense vibration called sickness or lack or whatever it is, even just depression or whatever, something of a not so blissful nature. It's got this vibration behind it though. Before something manifested as an issue or problem, it has to have had a believer, a vibration behind it. The knowingness of God becomes beliefs in us, then thoughts, emotions, and manifestations. So before that thing manifested, our problem, behind it is, like I said, vibration in the heart, sound, color, and form. That's the spiritual, the heart intuitive realm, the mental realm, the astral realm. The astral realm is the emotional center, which is why you've heard me say, like people doing acid, the drug, they can do acid and say, oh wow, I see all these bizarre colors. That's because they're sort of ripping their etheric body open, their protective shield around themselves. They're ripping that open and looking into the astral plane, seeing colors of the astral world. That doesn't mean they're enlightened by any stretch of the imagination. They're actually ripping their protective sheath around them open through the drug abuse. It's actually killing brain cells, and then that manifests as tears in the astral body or the etheric body, looking then into the astral plane going, ooh, look at the pretty colors. That's actually not a great thing. So we bring it the other direction, and beliefs can change our thoughts, can change our feelings, emotions, and then change our experiences, our manifestations. And a miracle then is, here I have a problem down on the physical level, the manifest level. What I need to do is change what? Just my emotions? Just my thinking? My beliefs about who you are and who I am. If I'm having a negative experience, the Course will tell you, I must have thought wrong. I must have made a mistake in my thinking. It doesn't mean intellectual thinking. It means my beliefs about who you are and who I am. I must have forgotten who I am and then made a judgment somewhere. I don't have to know what the judgment was, just accept that it's probable that if you don't like your experience, it came from a misbelief. Okay, now I accept that. That's why the oops mantra is really cool. Oops, the humility, back to the heart, and then say, choose again. I forgot who I am, and I started letting my lower mind decide for me, which is called judgment. My emotions started showing it. My manifestation started showing it. You see that? And what I'm going to do is reverse it. Oops. Send that frequency of oops back to the heart. Oops, I was mistaken. Then what do you think you do next? Hey, God, sorry about that. I judged myself or someone else, which is your creation, God, as being less than divine. I'm ready to see them as divine now. God doesn't say, okay. God is already saying, That's great. Sending you all that you need to make that happen, the shift in beliefs. Once the shifts of beliefs happen, you can then change your thinking about it, your emotions about it, and then you see a difference in the form. That is now what we call, I had this miracle happen. And we sometimes, I don't even know how it happened. God must have helped, and we make all these abstract ideas about how a miracle happens. But there's a science to it, a spiritual science. I decided on some level this wasn't working, something wasn't healthy or good. You can't have a miracle if you don't even acknowledge something's a problem. There's a problem. I owned that it came from me in my beliefs. I surrendered it to God, asked for God's view instead, God's consciousness instead. Consciousness affects vibration. The vibration affected the sound, thoughts, the emotions and colors, down to the form manifestations. Boom! That's how it works. Okay? Not that you asked, but that's just where I went today. It's kind of funny, just a few seconds before we started this, the message came in, well, what's the topic so we can post it? I don't know. And then it just, comes to me. And I want to say, it comes to me. How? Because I'm brilliant, obviously. I'm wonderful and I'm tuned into God. No, man. How could I be doing this if you guys weren't also ready to hear the same thing? We need to understand, if you're there listening and you don't like this, it's because you're screwed up and you need to go do some healing. That's the truth. If you like this, you need to credit yourself. If you don't like it, you need to look at yourself. This isn't like I'm bringing you brilliance because I'm brilliant. I love when I share with you folks or anytime I'm teaching, and I get to own that feels great, and I'm very grateful that I choose to be a teacher. But the source of this is going to be God and my choices. You're the result for me, and thank you for manifesting that outside, love and support of what I do. But ultimately, it's God, my choices, and you people, all in alignment. We co-create this. But if I were sitting in your shoes watching, you have the same exact right to say the same thing I just said. You can say, I'm starting to really connect more with God. It's changing my beliefs, and my manifestation is watching this. So I'm your effect. Just like you're mine. So we all have the right to share this mutual credit. If it's ego and it's no God involved, I don't want involved. Leave me out of that. I'm not interested in being part of an ego experience with you, but I urge you to compliment yourself in the highest way, to say, this is God, my choosing God more, and I know it's happening because I, meaning you, I feel better, I feel different. And the ultimate manifestation is I loved this program. Or a song somebody played on the internet, some spiritual song, or a piece of art that I just went, wow. That's a manifestation of your changes in your beliefs. Just by the same token, if you have all kinds of negative stuff going on, you didn't like what I said and so forth, you have to look at why you're manifesting that. It has to be mirroring some off things. If you're saying, this guy's a lunatic, and so forth, first of all, you'd probably be a family member. No, I'm kidding. But if you think, this guy's a lunatic, your job, not that you would know to do this, because you probably, if you knew this, you wouldn't be calling other people a lunatic, meaning you wouldn't be hating somebody that's trying to do good. But if you thought, this guy's a jerk and nothing he's saying is true, there is no such thing as God, it would be manifesting your unfortunate beliefs that you're disconnected from God. And so even though I'm trying to do something good, you can make it into something bad, but it would be you making it that way. You can say that it's me, you can say it's I said the wrong thing, but you still have to ask yourself why you're seeing it that way, because you're co-creating your reality. And I say co-creating with anybody else that shares that same experience. God wouldn't see it that way. God wouldn't see somebody that's trying to do good and find fault with them. God would not will that you feel upset or hating anybody. So if that happens with me or anybody else in your life, it's a sign. Even if it's somebody that was a major jerk to you, that's not how your life is supposed to end. I'm sorry that some people might have been hurtful, yet your job is not to leave it that way. Your job is to say, wow, if that happened, that might have been a manifestation of my consciousness and vibrations being off, and I can change it in a split second, and then do so. Create love, create good good visions of things. You can laugh at and see things for what they are. You don't have to judge things. I make jokes about things. Doesn't mean I actually hate those things. I make jokes about human consciousness because anything disconnected from God is ridiculous. You can say that's judgmental. No, it actually is ridiculous because if it's not connected to God, it's not real. So therefore, it's not worth putting any energy and any time into, any investment into. That's something I would call kind of silly or ridiculous or worthless. But it's easier for me to call a thing silly or ridiculous or whatever rather than worthless, because if I'm talking about people, that could sound very hurtful and personal. But I'm saying the consciousness, the weirdness, the limited beliefs that they're coming from is just not really worth much, okay? So I leave you guys with that. I want you to remember that I have a Friends of Facebook page. You can go to this. What you're seeing here is Michael Mirdad's public page, but you can go to my Friends of. You're invited to at least request to be part of the Friends of Michael Mirdad Facebook page. It's nothing personal if we don't say yes. Our team has a variety of reasons that I can't tell you. If I give them away, then you might try to, seem different, But we're looking for people that are really sincere about wanting to be involved. I don't want people that are just looking for another group to be involved in. I don't want people to go on the site and preach to people, because I don't even do that. I like us all to pitch in and work together and inspire each other. We don't typically want people on there saying, well, I believe this and you're wrong. That's not at all the place for that. We also don't get into negativity and politics and watch out for this and look out for that. It's not a place for that. So yes, it's a Friends of Michael Mirdad, and Michael Mirdad, although I have a very strong side, you're going to see the site as a manifestation of me and the people on the site. There's songs and poems and fairies and angels and soft, cuddly things, because that's, I think, how I am and how we are, the people attracted to the group. You go on there and you say, no, we got to understand politics and this person should win and that person should win and this is right and that's wrong. No, it's not the place for that. Even if you're right, it's not the place to slam each other. There's times when we do discuss things like that and say, what do you think of this and that? But it's done gently. So it's not for everybody is what I'm leading to. So, don't take it personally if it doesn't seem like it ends up for you. Just see if it feels right. Join us. You're welcome to join us. Join us Sunday services if you feel called to watch us live there. But I've said it many, many times, but thank you. Thank you for your trust, because I know it's not easy to trust people giving advice. That makes them parental figures, and that's not always good for us in memory-wise. It makes them leaders, and with politics and people like that in our history, that doesn't always feel good. So, I'm in a role that's, 90% potential negative for people. Male, leader, spiritual, religious. Those are pretty negative for a lot of people. The fact that I can come out of that, looking good at all to any of you, it means you must have done some work to overlook all that other past stuff and not project it onto me, and I appreciate that. I do, because it's hard to sometimes have all that kind of stuff, potentially projected on you or me or whomever, even, the parental piece. So, and if you're in those roles too, God bless you, and hang in there. Stay the course. People will, you're the older sibling to some people at work because you're a manager. That's going to be an older sibling that they might project their issues on you. It could be parental. It could be God, issues with God or religion that they project on you just for being a manager or supervisor. You have no idea. Maybe I'll talk about that someday. But there's a lot that we all bear, and just hang in there, because if what you're doing is right, it's worth bearing. If what you're doing is wrong and unhealthy, it's not worth bearing, and you should make some changes. But bless you all, love you all, God bless you all, and I hope today and pray today made a lot of sense, because it could make a difference in your life. Okay? Peace be with you. Remember, check at times. I forget to mention things like that, but I got DVD sets out there. And the one, the creation process and mind, spirit, versus matter, those are very deep sets. So check those out if they make sense to you, okay? Many blessings. Peace be with you, and we'll join you again soon. Bye-bye.